another set of musings. Apparently the video and sound check went well because people seemed to like it. I was thinking about the differences between people and their temperaments, and how most people have an opinion about how other people can improve. And I was thinking about the concept of the shadow. It's a Jungian concept. Carl Jung was a psychoanalyst in the early to mid 20th century. And he had a psychodynamic orientation. Suke for soul, dunamos for power or energy. So suke dunamos, psychodynamic, basically means that your brain is like a set of pipes, and there's energy that flows through it. Not energy in a new wave sense, but just energy like, you eat carbohydrates and it's broken down into glucose, and that glucose through the Krebs cycle is broken down into adenosine triphosphate, et cetera, et cetera. Just energy is in what keeps your body going. And just like pipes, if it's blocked in one area, it's going to flow into another area, maybe overflow. And so there's a couple of concepts that the psychoanalysts introduced and developed. And the first is that rather than being primarily a rational being, res cogitans, to quote Descartes, you are a loosely confederated series of emotions, memories, drives, instincts, and motivational states. And the analogy is often used that you're the rider on an elephant. Like, you can kind of direct it, but if it's got a will, if it wants something, you're not going to be able to really do much about it. So the best you can do is kind of keep your seat and restore order. So maybe you've heard in conversation, oh, well, they're just totally projecting. So here's what that means. When kids are born, babies are born, they're 100% pure instinct. They don't have any thoughts. They're not conscious. They're sentient, but they're not conscious. And they don't even understand the distinction between themselves and their mothers until they're like 6 months old. Object permanence is not a thing till well into the first year. So they just do whatever. They poop in their pants, they cry, when they're hungry they cry, they eat, they fall asleep, they just do whatever. And doing whatever is awesome. They reach a certain age, toddler years usually, and doing whatever becomes problematic. Poop in your pants now, and it's not really cool for mommy to have to clean you up anymore. We're gonna start expecting you to do that. It's not really cool to eat whenever anymore. You've got to eat at the table with mommy and daddy, and you can't snack before or after. You can't just cry because maybe we're at church or maybe we're in a restaurant, and you need to be aware of the situation around you and follow certain social rules. And the point at which doing whatever based on instinct and following social rules begins to clash is in the toddler years. That's why Freud was talking about potty training as really a critical event. People are like, oh, he's obsessed with toilets or whatever. No, the example of toilet training is important because that's the point at which doing whatever, whenever, and following society's rules starts to really come into contact and conflict. So the child begins to see and understand at a subconscious level and an unconscious level. And I can explain the difference. Unconscious is you're not even aware of it at all. And subconscious is you're aware of it, but it takes some recall. Like if I asked you what your best friend's phone number was in high school, you could probably pull it up, but it would take you a minute. So it's accessible to you, but it's not right at the surface. That's subconscious. Unconscious is, wait a minute, I only date women that look like my mother. Ugh. And those are the kinds of things that happen in therapy. So, but the child's aware on a subconscious and unconscious level that them doing them sometimes pisses off mommy and daddy, alienates me from mommy and daddy. That is freaking terrifying because if you're 2, my son's 2, he's 2 feet tall, 2.5 feet tall. He weighs all of like 28 pounds or something. And I could destroy his life with very little effort. I never would, but I could. I'm 6'3", I'm very strong because I'm a laborer. And I'm a terrible threat to a toddler. Not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually, because whatever bullcrap ideas I have, whatever resentments, whatever, if I'm mad at his mommy for not meeting my expectations for whatever reason, man, humans are so complex and so crooked that I can, through my nonverbal communication and through my sighing and complaining and stuff, poison him against his mom in ways that won't manifest in his life until he's in his mid-20s and has a lot of trouble dating because I didn't show him how to treat a woman right. I mean, it's so insidious. But anyway, the child begins to see that, okay, me doing me, whatever, whenever, is not okay because it alienates me from mommy and daddy. But sometimes, because my temperament and genetics are different from mommy and daddy's, sometimes I'm going to be inclined to do things that piss them off or that alienate me from them. A simple example is, I've really gotten used to a certain standard of living. I've really gotten used to taking a dump in my pants whenever I want to, and now I got to hold it. Ugh. So I have an instinct, a bodily urge that I have to sit on, no pun intended, until the appropriate time. And that's where these terms come from, by the way. So you've called somebody anal retentive, or well, she's being really anal about it. And Freud came up with that term, and there's 2 terms. One is anal retentive, one is anal expulsive. What that means is 2 kinds of well, there's more than 2, but there are 2 kinds of, at least 2 kinds of people. The kind of people who, when society tells them you can only take a dump in the bathroom with the door shut and you have to clean it all up yourself, and don't you poop at an inappropriate time. Some people are like, okay, and they anal retentive. They retain what's in there because they don't want to break the rules. They're very oriented towards obeying, following society's rules. They're conformist in that sense. So they're anal retentive. Anal expulsive, we all know these kinds of people, are presented with the rules of society and go, I'm going to take a dump whenever I want. And these have problems, and they're rebellious types, right? Free thinkers, you might say. Now, a lot of Freud's ideas have been discredited, sometimes fairly, and sometimes unfairly. This is a point Jordan Peterson makes. When you revolutionize a discipline, the things you get right are adopted by the culture and assimilated by it, so that everyone says, oh, well, she's a really anal person. She's being really anal about those expense reports. But no one knows it's Freud. No one knows what I just told you, which is that the theory of psychosexual development and toilet training leads, that's the phrase, anal retentive. So they're cherry picking bits of that theory without citation, as people are prone to do. So, and then the idea is that the only things left with his name on them are things he got wrong. So that's the origin of psychodynamic theory, and there's more I could say about the id and the superego or whatever. But Jung talked about the concept of projection, and projection happens when a shadow archetype is formed or coalesces. Here's what the shadow is. Let's say you're an artist in a family of engineers, and you're very right-brained, you're very color and contrast and patterns and shapes and dimensionality, and you view the world in a very artistic manner, but your parents are very mathematically oriented, left-brain, linear, as opposed to lateral. You learn to conform to their expectations in order to survive. You very quickly learn that when you do certain things or behave in certain ways, it displeases mom. And in other ways, it pleases mom. So you, wanting to please mom, behave in ways that please her but don't really come naturally to you. You learn how to please the people around you so that you don't starve to death or get beaten. And I'm not saying kids are going to starve or get beaten if they don't conform 100% to what their parents want. I'm not even saying parents force this on their kids. I'm saying it's a natural consequence of kids learning primarily by imitation, and the old adage that more is caught than taught. And if I manifest a trait or a behavior that my parents don't like, I quickly, in my little 4-year-old brain, go, oh, that behavior's not allowed. Farting is obviously hilarious, but I'm not allowed to fart at the table. That's another example of a bodily function that you suppress in order to follow society's rules. So, you develop what's called a persona. That's the first Jungian archetype, is the persona. It's a mask. And it's Greek for the kind of masks that actors would wear. So one's persona is the mask you present to the world. It's your version of what you think society wants out of a person. Well, what if you have traits that don't line up with your version of what you think society wants from a person? You decide they're off limits and you banish them, you suppress them. Well, remember that pipe analogy from before. If you block up the system in one place, it's gonna that energy is gonna flow to another place. Jung called the energy libido, by the way, the life force. Again, not in a new age way, but just in the natural way that your body breaks down nutrients in order to form, in order to power your body's systems. That's the energy we're talking about. So, lost my train of thought. Libido. So, block up one pipe and the libido flows to some more other areas. Well, the shadow it's unconscious, and it is comprised of all the things that you have decided are off limits. So, for example, I'm an aggressive person. And I'm an older brother. And aggression, generally speaking, was frowned upon in the therapeutic culture of the 1990s. At least where I grew up. You know, it typically wasn't like, go be a shark. Like movies like Wall Street, for example, are saying, no, don't be greedy. That's, you know, it's slimy to be aggressive almost. And so to get along in society, I kind of had to suppress that. And by suppressing it, it wasn't going anywhere. It just went where I couldn't see it. In other words, it went into the shadow. The shadow is the unconscious counterpart of the persona. The persona is what I think society wants, and the shadow is all the stuff I've decided is off limits. There's still key parts of who I am, but they're off limits. Now, Jung had this concept that the unconscious is compensatory. In other words, something's going on in your unconscious mind that is trying to compensate for something in your conscious mind. And so if you're a wimp in your conscious daily awareness and existence, maybe you have dreams where you're a strong person, or you're a domineering person, or you're a threatening person. And you wake up from that dream going, oh, how terrible, I would never want to be that person. And the unconscious is actually telling you, you need to manifest more aggression and, not hostility, but assertiveness. Because you're insufficiently aggressive now. Well, if you don't do the work of making that conscious, then you are going to see it in other people, and it's going to piss you off. And the simple concept of a shadow projection is this. That which I don't like about myself, that which I have denied about myself, I will see in others, and it will make me upset. It will anger me. Now, everybody, I think, has had the experience where someone you don't know very well, maybe you don't even know their name, you see them, and they just get a real bad vibe. You just are hostile to. Look at that douchebag walking over there with his hat. Well, come on, having a hat's not a crime. Like, he's just walking, he's trying to live his life. But you're like, well, what Jung would say is pay attention to people who piss you off a little too much. Pay attention to people who piss you off more than the situation warrants. Like maybe a minor inconvenience that warrants a 2 out of 10 on the anger scale gets you up to like a 6 or 7. We're like, you know what? And Jung would say, you need to study that person and find out what trait are they manifesting that is a trait that you don't like about yourself. And this does a number of things. One is, teaches you to be self-aware. Like if I interact with someone and they're really good with women, for example, or they're really confident and assertive, and I start having thoughts like, if I was irresponsible, I'd be that way too. Or, look at that, he's just a ladies' man, he's a hoe, he's an F-boy. Might be true, but it also might be me wishing I had the courage to manifest the confidence, even the swagger, to be attractive to the opposite sex. Not that that's the only thing that attracts the opposite sex. It's swagger's either true or it's not, and sometimes it's hard to tell until you're emotionally entangled, which is really difficult and painful. But maybe it's something I wish I could. So, for example, I knew somebody who would see other people relaxing and go, I could never be that irresponsible. Well, there's a part of them that just wants to relax. It doesn't feel like it can because it would let their parents down, or because only lazy people relax. Well, if you believe that only lazy people relax, then you're never going to relax because you don't want to be lazy. Well, here's the deal. If you never relax, you're going to develop heart trouble. Your muscles are going to hurt. Your joints are going to hurt. You're not going to sleep well, because being tense and stressed is tremendously draining on your body's ability to fight off disease, for example. It drains your immune system. So that belief that only lazy people relax, that comes from childhood. That comes from one's parents or one's caregivers of some kind, authority figures, teachers, coaches, whatever, saying or putting out that only lazy people relax. And then you internalize that belief, and your desire to relax is bad because it would make you lazy, so you put it into the shadow. Then you project it onto other people. And if I were to ask you, who can you just not stand? You'd say, well, lazy people. Can't stand them. They're good for nothing. Why don't they notice and help out more? It's even in the Bible, Mary and Martha. Mary's sitting at the feet of Jesus, and Martha says, Lord, tell Mary to help me do housework. Jesus is like, bro, are you for real right now? The Lord of Glory is giving a lecture series, and you want to do the dishes. He wasn't that mean about it. He said, Martha, Martha, you're troubled by many things, but she has chosen the better way. That's one example of how projection of the shadow can prevent you. It can make you miss what's really important about life, and I think we've all been guilty of that to some extent. So to summarize, psychodynamic theory, it's not just you in there, it's you plus a bunch of other stuff. One of the other things that's in there is the persona. Some people think persona is them. It's really just the face they show society. Another thing that's in there is the shadow, the parts of you that you have decided are off limits. And projection of the shadow is when you see the parts of you that are off limits in other people and it pisses you off. Okay, so how do you begin to, Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it fate. You'll date the same kind of boy over and over and over, and it'll never work out, and you'll keep dating that kind of boy or girl. You'll keep going for the same job because you don't realize that that's what you think your dad wants, even though he's been dead for 10 years. Stuff like that. So make the unconscious conscious. How do you begin to explore the personal shadow? Well, two things, and these come from Jordan Peterson too. Closely monitor your resentment. If something makes you resentful, figure out who and what it is. And the second is monitor your daydreams or your night dreams. Monitor your dreams. And because they can begin to tell you things. If you don't dream at night and remember it very much, most people don't, but daydreams, fantasies, can tell you a lot about what's going on under the hood, so to speak. But if you're resentful because people walk all over you, maybe that means you need to become more aggressive and assertive, because your aggression as a person is not going anywhere. And the analogy I like to use is It's either in the front yard on a leash protecting you from burglary, or it's in your backyard digging up the tulips and threatening the neighbor's kids. So it's not a matter of not being an aggressive person. It's a matter of, is it under your conscious awareness and control, and can you harness it to good ends? Because unregulated aggression is just making war on people, right? But regulated aggression is assertiveness. It's the ability to say no. And when you have the ability to say no, and this is Jordan Peterson too, you have the ability to negotiate. And there's three positions in life. There's tyrant, there's slave, and there's negotiation. You don't want to be a tyrant, you don't want to be a slave. Maybe you want to be, but it's not right, not optimal. But so negotiation is the way to go. And you can't really negotiate unless you know what you want and you can express it. I can talk about that later. I'm almost at my job, and so I will wrap up. Y'all don't hurt nobody.